Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fable's Cove, a working title, new podcast where we interview DMs every week and their players to hear all about their fantasy realms and worlds and their experiences, their memories, their bad experiences, good experiences, and all around good or bad times. Uh, First episode's a little bit different because we don't have a guest this week. We're going to be going over a campaign that I ran for about 3, almost 4 years, with the name Quezdefart. Today I have 3 guests with me. I have David, Leo, and Nicky. How you boys doing today? Good?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, Bale. Thank you for having me.
What are you boys?
I'm all right.
Hell yeah, dude. So I don't know how this is really going to go because typically I would be interviewing another DM, and being that this is a episode about my campaign, I guess I'm going to start off by chatting a little bit about it and like what it was and how it kind of evolved into something that I never really expected it to become, which I think like most people that played in it could agree. I started out this campaign my sophomore year of college at a community college because a group of people there were interested in learning how to play D&D. And at this point, I've been playing and DMing. Well, I've been playing for 6 years at that point and DMing for 3, I think. And, moving forward, I went back home and asked any of my boys if they were interested in learning how to play D&D. And lo and behold, I wound up getting 10 people total who were really interested in learning to play. And that threw a challenge at me where I thought, how can I DM a game for 10 people? That's not necessarily possible. So I got 2 other DMs to come and join the party, quite literally, to come up with mini games every Wednesday where we could kind of meet up at this tavern and pick and choose a different mission every week. And you wouldn't know the DM who's running the game, and you wouldn't know anything about it. And that way, every time you're with a different group of people and a different DM, and you were kind of experiencing this whole new experience in a town every week named Quezdefart. So I guess we'll start with introducing your guys' characters before we talk about like the origin of the name Quezdefart. If I could kind of get you guys in on this. So maybe David, if you want to start talking about your character, because I think that you and Nicky were there kind of the whole time.
Yeah, so I didn't start playing in Quezdefart until a little bit after it had already started. Nicky was there since probably session 1. I came into it like a few months later because I wasn't too keen on playing D&D at first, but then through Quezdefart, it was really like the campaign that really got me going. But my character or characters, I started off as a tabaxi gunslinger named Rudolph the Big Bazoo Armstrong, who could forget. And after playing with him for probably like 2 or 3 months, I got real sick and tired of it. So I changed to a different character, a Gloomstalker Ranger shifter by the name of Lopretny. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I love both your characters. I especially love Lopretny. I don't know if it was because of like the presence lasted longer or the effect on the campaign was larger. But I want to get more into Lopretny later because I think of like the top 3 player characters in the game. I think that yours is probably number 1 just because of the arc that it followed and the reveals that we kind of worked on together without like ruining it for each other. So I want to get to that because that was really, really huge. But
Yeah, of course.
Nikki, what about you? Tell me about Kevin.
So Kevin Fry is a completely original character that I made up. He's basically it was my first time, or like second time, basically first time ever playing D&D, and so I had no idea who to make. And right before I was hanging out with another friend named Matthew Fry, no relation to Kevin Fry, of course. But he helped me make a character, and I was just assigning random classes. And he was like, "You shouldn't be a spellcaster. You're kind of complicated." And I was like, "I'll be a spellcaster." And so that happened. And then I didn't know what to name him. And then I saw Matt's brother, Kevin Fry. And I was just like, he's gonna be Kevin Fry. So that's how he came around. And then we went to a session, which I don't know which session in Quezdefart it was, but I remember there was like 14 people in your garage thing, Bailey, and it was Ted and Nate and you DMing. And then the mission we did was me and Matt did a mission for you. And I forget Matt's gay bard's name, but he was really funny. Wait, do you remember what it was, Bailey? Or David?
I remember. I don't. Bale, do you remember?
It's so weird because whenever I think of like the characters in this campaign, I always partnered like Kevin with Matt's character, but for some reason, every time I think of Matt's character's name, it goes straight to Kevin, and I don't know why, because I know that that's Nicky's, and it's just been so long at this point. I'm like, I don't know, Kevin, Keith, something.
Yeah. Well, the K's are correct because he was Carl.
Carl.
Damn it. Yeah, Carl with a K.
I just knew it was 2 Ks.
Yeah, it was Carl with a K. That was his full name.
But that was my first time playing D&D for real, and then we got sent on a mission to a bandit camp to take out 2 just seemingly random baddies that ended up being 2 basically kind of final boss people or very important people in the game. And instead of killing them, Kevin just decided to hit on one of them and keep them alive. And so then that started one of his character arcs.
Yeah, that's another thing I want to get into later on is like the relationships that the player characters had with the NPCs, because I think that the 2 best ones of all time, or no, 3 best ones of all time was 1, LaPretney with Pagodi. Well, no, actually it would be Rudy and Pagodi technically, and then Kevin and Tess, and then Carl with a K and Stanley Darrington, because every single time that Matt went into the armor store, he would walk out and like ask for a deal and then be like, fuck you, and then walk out. But then he would go across the street to Flex's and treat him with like the most respect ever. And that to me was like the funniest shit ever. And it never went anywhere, but it was so comical. But before we get into that, Leo, my main man, you hopped on the train a little bit later, but I want to hear about Boognish. Tell me about Boognish.
Yeah. So Boognish, whose original name I do not remember because I lost a character sheet. But he is an Air Genasi monk, and he I joined back 2 years ago in like the middle of everything. And it was my first game ever of D&D, which was, a crazy experience all in itself. I spent 2 hours making the character that night while people were doing like solo missions and stuff. And that happened to be like the overnight, like the big overnight game out of like all the missions. So it was like a crazy like 7-hour campaign like mission, and yeah, basically, it was my first experience, so the character wasn't like super fleshed out, but he's just like a really cool like monk. He was always very like just calm kind of attitude towards things, and just tried to like perceive what was going on and come up with like the best solution that hurt as few people as possible. So I always tried to like make a solution that was always like I don't know, I guess peaceful or like not too crazy. Um, and yeah, that was kind of it for like I think 3 missions, and then there was like a big break, and during that huge break, it actually my character had the cool opportunity to go through like its own arc, and he actually became part of like this underground little um, village. You know, like basically all the NPCs and my character were underground hiding for 5 years because of some big event that happened that we'll get into. And it was a really cool thing to just kind of like be in the know of like certain things and in the campaign, and then have other players come back and like have to explain to them and introduce what's going on in the world. Um, and got to be in the final mission, which was awesome, like the final boss battle, and dealt the final blow on the boss, which felt super cool. Uh, so it was such a cool ride, a super cool first campaign, and super memorable, and just got me into D&D. So yeah.
Yeah, I love your character arc specifically because there was almost like a lack thereof because you had joined late, and I almost like felt bad for that because I noticed like in the beginning you appeared to feel like a little bit more left out because you didn't know what was going on. So I thought by maybe like escalating a certain situation, which I'm about to get into, and having you be the only person that like knows like what happened would be like a really great way to get you like involved in actual like story in this game when it actually became story based. So I thought it was I thought it was pretty fucking awesome.
That was so awesome. That felt great. Thank you
uh,
for that.
yeah.
Cool
No doubt, no fucking doubt. I want to get into like what this because we keep talking about how this campaign turned into something and there's a big boss battle, but I know in the beginning I mentioned that it was just a way to get a bunch of people together to play D&D every Wednesday night, and that kind of was how it was for a while. I think that's how it was for about a year, like real time, where we kind of just got together every Wednesday. We started playing, and I thought it was an interesting way for even the DMs to be able to like take a break from DMing and let someone new try and DM because every week it was in the same town, Quezdefart, and it would, you'd be able to sit down, play a game. So I had a player character named Lenny, and it started to become an issue for me to play Lenny, and that's when I realized that maybe we should start developing a real story because what started out as just this simple little riverport town in Silverymoon and faerun wound up becoming something that we played every week. So for me to have a player character named Lenny, who was a Kenku, it started to become impossible to play because I would know things about NPCs and this and that because like me, Nate, and Ted made these NPCs together. Once it got to a certain point, I knew too much, so I had to make Lenny an NPC, and that's what made me decide to really start like developing a story. I have a good trivia question for you guys. Do you guys remember how the name of the Riverport town got named Questapart?
I wasn't even there for it, but I remember it.
Shoot it.
It was you asked all of the players in the room to give you a letter, and then you named the town with the letters that they gave you.
Was I even there for that?
No, there's only 10 people there for that. And I think that you, David, and who else? Matt. I think you, David, and Matt weren't there yet. It was just the people from OCC, Nate, and Ted.
Yeah.
And so that's why it wasn't 14 letters.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I even heard this story before. I just assumed it was just named Quezdefart.
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
Like
forget
some
when you
Aztec
told.
thing or something.
I forgot when you told me, but we were like talking about it one day, and that you brought it up. That's the only reason why I know.
Yeah. Well, I know that maybe it can't have the same like impact on you guys of how much this like campaign and this story really affected the way that you guys play this game. But I learned so much from this game, and it kind of started out as just like a riverport town in Silverymoon, like heavily elvish based and orc based because of, uh, or half orc based, but it wound up evolving into a like well-renowned town in faerun slash Silverymoon because of the fact that like you guys played in it. You brought good things to it. You protected the outside of the town from certain things in each mission. And I started incorporating this into the town to start building it and making it better and having new NPCs. And I just, it really taught me a lot because it made me realize that like one of the brilliant things about Dungeons and Dragons and any tabletop game is that it's like a form of art in itself because you're writing the story collectively that doesn't even exist yet. And that's like the weird and super interesting part. And that's what this campaign made me realize because I didn't even ever imagine having a big bad in this story because it wasn't a story until we like started writing it together and developing characters together. And before we get into introducing the big bads, was there like a mission that you guys did on a Wednesday night that like really stood out to you guys? Like, what's your favorite one? What was your least favorite one?
Well, this one took course over I think two Wednesdays, and they're like 2 months apart. But the race, if you remember that, Bailey.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a longer one. If you want to get to it later or not.
Well, no, I think that the premise of the race was pretty simplistic because you guys did it was Annadette was the the recreational field owner, and she held the annual summer race. And yeah, if you want to get into it, feel free. I mean, that's what this is all about.
Well, yeah, that one's interesting because it just seemed like a simple like, okay, there's like 8 people or whatever. Then whoever gets to the tower first after this gauntlet wins. You're allowed to fight each other. And it's like, okay, so it's just gonna be that kind of thing. And then it ended in dragons somehow, sun dragons, and the evil angel lady. So that was interesting. But before that, Kevin and Carl went to the armor shop and met with Stanley and got 2 costumes, spandex, of course, and they became the Flash and the Arrow. And that was another, if you want to elaborate on that Stanley interaction with Matt.
Yeah, that was I think that's where the relationship started like with Stanley because he didn't have like spandex or anything. And then Carl with a K, Matt's character was like, "Are you kidding me? You call yourself an armor shop and you don't have spandex?" And then of course I had to do some stupid DM shit and I was like, "Oh, give me a second." And then he went to the back and pulled out spandex. And then from there, every time Matt left, he was like, "Fuck you," and then walked out. But yeah, that was a fun thing. That was actually the mission that started making me think about like progressing the story forward. Because if you remember the end of the race, that it wasn't a gauntlet that you were going for; it was a sunstone.
Well, I just meant like the race itself was like kind of a gauntlet.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But that's also when I think the first time I was able to use Fireball, and the first time I used it, it happened to be on like some sort of water person who was wearing, or a person that was wearing armor, and that armor let them like breathe water, but made them like increasingly susceptible to fire attacks.
So it was like a water skin.
Yeah. So I did like 40 damage, and you're like, no, you actually did 80. And you just say like how like the person like basically shriveled up and just died instantly. And then like they dropped a notebook. The notebook was like how they're like talking to their mom again. We're so excited and like telling them how they were gonna do this race. And it's just like, oh geez.
Yeah, no, that was And you know what I think it was? Is that it wasn't the water genasi that had the note. It was when you did that to the water genasi, it gave me like an idea because you also fought an Aarakocra.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, the bird. The
Yeah, and
bird
then
man.
you killed the Aarakocra, and I was like, man, they're gonna kill everyone in this race. So I tried to instill some type of like character development or like morality. So I threw a notebook on the Aarakocra that said like, after I win this race, I'll have the money to like save the family. Love you, mom.
And, but that didn't stop our murderous rage, I guess. Because then we killed we found a little goblin hiding in the trees. His name was Goblin. He
Oh
actually
my
almost
god!
got
Oh
to the
my
first
god!
tower.
The Tale of Goblin.
I
Oh
don't
my...
think we actually killed Goblin though. I
No,
think
Goblin never
Goblin
died.
activated the sunstone thing, right, and then started getting targeted.
Yeah, yeah. So, unintentionally. So, man, there's so much in this campaign that was so fucking funny. Leo, I don't even think you were in here yet for this shit. But, we had a character by this guy named Nathan who wound up not really working out in the campaign, but his character was so funny. He made a goblin rogue named Gobloin and unintentionally made the most busted busted rogue ever because um, with the goblin getting +2 to dex and like being able to like disengage as a bonus action after attacking or hide, and it was like all the time. It was just like putting out damage, killing everything, and he had no idea what he was doing. And I was like, oh my god, this is terrible. But as a DM, I didn't want to tell him to like change his characters, but luckily he stopped showing up. So I threw him in as an NPC who would just randomly show up and like fuck shit up and then leave. And in the race, I put him as a racer, like a character in the race, and Nicky and Matt almost killed him. And they left him on the riverbank. And then he came out when they got the sunstone. He grabbed it and tried to run away, and then some crap started going down. All around, that was just a really funny game.
But my favorite moment from there is after we summoned the dragon, and then it was the evil angel lady. Forget exactly what she was called, but she was disguised as the recreational field owner. But it happened kind of a mage battle where she suggested that I jump off the tower that we were on, and then it failed. And I said, "No, how about you jump off the tower?" And then they jumped off the tower, and it was just a really goofy thing that happened right there. So, I one that was my favorite spell the first couple sessions I played.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. Normally the suggestion spell doesn't
Doesn't let you hurt people, but
yeah, yeah. It was just like rule of cool and so funny that you were like, no, how about you jump off that tower? And I was like, yeah, how about she does? And that was a lot of fun. Um, what about you? What about you, David?
Well, first things first, I gotta say, I forgot about Nikki's like reign of terror with suggestion because it was like every other word out of my mouth. Nikki was like, "I suggest you do something different."
Oh yeah, he would do it to players too. I
a lot
forgot
of
about
that,
that.
a lot of that.
I never
Definitely, like,
did it to a player. I think I might have done it once, and it was to Rudy, but that's
yeah,
it.
yeah. That was what I was just gonna say. Is like my first character, Rudolph, was like classic edgy, loner D&D character, which is one of the biggest reasons why I decided to stop playing him. But Rudolph and Kevin did not get along at all.
Well, Rudolph hated magic, and
Oh,
Kevin
oh,
thought that was funny.
oh
So
yeah,
that's why Kevin would mess with Rudolph.
he absolutely hated it. But in terms of my favorite sessions, I have like a few answers. But one that just came to my mind while I was thinking about this, and I can't believe I forgot, was one of the first few sessions I played as Rudolph. Not the very first with like I believe Nate was DMing and Bailey, you were playing as Lenny, and Ted was there, and Ted found a giraffe, and you tried to kill the giraffe, and Ted was like, "Oh my God, why are you trying to kill the giraffe?"
Yeah, I remember. That
Yeah,
was
yeah,
before I knew who Lenny was. Because after that session, I was like, Lenny doesn't want to hurt animals. Why would I do that?
yeah. um, but what I was gonna say was the session where Nikki, I think you were there. We went camping, and the camp guides were vampires because in that game, it was mostly the combat of that game that really really set it off for me. The one thing that I remember most
I think you mean lack of combat for you, David.
No, not this game. Okay.
Pagodi.
What you're talking about. Yeah, well, yeah, there was that. All right. So the combat encounters, your NPC Pagodi just decimated everything. Like every turn he had, he just walloped absolutely everything. And me, Nicky, and the other player who was with us, just like we're just standing back and watching in awe as he just went through and tore up these vampires. But the one cool thing that I did get to do whenever my gun wasn't breaking was I chose the forceful shot trick shot for the gunslinger, and so we were fighting around a big campfire, and I think it was the girl vampire. I was like sort of in like a little one-on-one fight with, and I rolled to make an attack with forceful shot, and it hit, and she failed the saving throw. So Rudolph pulled out his revolver all cowboy style, and I remember specifically I like made note that he like stopped everything he was doing and just went kaboom and shot her back 15 feet into the giant fire with like silvered bullets, and she fell in and burned to death. And that was when that happened, that was like one of the biggest moments that really made me like recognize how much I loved playing Dungeons and Dragons, because all of the things that happened in that second, it was like role play, and it was flavor for my character's actions, and it was pulling off something really cool in combat. It was such like a natural high. I loved it so much.
Yeah.
I want to add a little bit about that encounter real quick. I think that was one of the 2 shots from Rudolph that actually went off. Because
all right, listen, you're talking mad shit from someone in fucking shooting range, brother.
It was really funny because he went to like this was like his first time, or I think like the first time my character was with Rudolph.
Yeah.
But then he had like a really like scary gun and all that, and then he goes to shoot it, and then David rolls 2 1s in a row. I think he rolls a 1 to shoot it, and then like a 2 on fixing it or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then fixes it, and then the next turn, he jams it again, and it's just, oh okay. And it was just
that was another reason why I stopped playing a gunslinger. The misfire.
yeah. I want to get There's so many missions that we could talk about, but I want to get to talking about NPCs. So I want to get Leo in here and hear if you have like a favorite mission or a least favorite mission you really want to like talk about.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to say that my favorite mission was probably the first mission I played, which was Pagodi's backstory, which it was a crazy mission. Like basically, first of all, like the map was expanded because he was he like a giant or half giant?
Half giant.
Half giant.
I just want to jump in real quick and say this mission was going to be one of my other answers, but I'll let you talk about it, Leo.
Okay, so basically, we started off. This is like my first game ever with Pagodi, who's like one of the main NPCs we talked to, probably if not the main guy. He gives us all the the quests, and he said that he had something really important for us, I believe, and send us off in a really nice, huge carriage. And the first really cool thing about this entire mission is everything is like jumbo size. Like from the second we get into the carriage, everything is huge because we're talking about giants. Like his family is like all like giants, and they have like this huge house, and like all the movement is doubled. So we go from like moving like the standard distance to like that becomes negligible in this giant space that we're playing in. Like you can move, like I was a monk and I had really fast movement speed, and that still felt like nothing. Oh boy. Yeah, so that was like the first really cool thing about it. And also it was it was really cool with all the combat involved there. There's a lot of different like combat going on. And it was also like a big mystery. It was kind of like a murder mystery. Um, and it was super intense because we were there. And it was just like a party with like nice music or whatever. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I think someone dies or something. I think it was who died?
Yeah, someone died. Yeah. So the way that mission started out is it's blurry because it was, I think this was like 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, like in real time. But Pagodi, which I'll get to in the NPC section, he was basically head honcho NPC. He was like the guy you talked to every week, got missions from. He owned the tavern. It was Pagodi's tavern. He gave you guys a mission, and it was when we had a real life like all nighter 24-hour D&D session. It was like 12 hours long of gameplay. He asked you to come with him to this party because he didn't trust the host, so he wanted you there as backup. And then the host dies, and Vagoti starts freaking out. And then at the end of the mission, you find out that it was his dad.
Exactly.
And he wanted to try and say that he had friends. He wanted you to go as his friends, but he didn't want to tell you that, so he told you needed backup.
Yeah, it was crazy, and like the ending like kind of blew me away because like knew very little about D&D, and it was just like this whole like just mind blowing situation where he like cloned himself, and like the way he first presented it was that I think there was like a drop of like there was like a pool of water, and it was like the clones turn into water after a certain period of time, but like it was just a pool of water, and we all like investigated it and like going up to it, and at one point Pagodi gets enraged. I think this is at the very beginning. He gets enraged and he wants to fight everyone, which is terrifying because like I heard his reputation. He's crazy, and he's this beast of a man, and he's enraged.
Yeah, as someone who watched Pagodi fight for the first time, it's something to behold.
Man, so we were very scared to deal with that. So I basically just came up with this idea since I was an air genasi to put him in like an air vortex, and somehow I rolled basically the entire like duration of like the mission, or like when we had to deal with him, I rolled to keep him up in air. So we probably thwarted one of like the biggest threats, if not the biggest threat, like that session. So that was a cool like helpful thing I got to do right away. And I think we also met another NPC. Who was that at the door?
It was like the Igor looking guy.
The Igor guy. Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, he wasn't important. Like he never showed up again, but he was there to like take your coats and your weapons.
Yeah, and then he ended up being insane.
Yeah. I love that mission. That was like, I know David had probably has something he wants to put in about it, but that was like a lot of fun to make, let alone like run and watch happen. But I don't know if you guys have I ever told you guys this. The description of the house that you guys were in, it was like the board game map of Clue. And I just never like
you told me that like way after we had played it already. Like I don't think you mentioned it until like maybe a year later.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I'm allowed to piggyback off of that, that was a super fun session too. I was still playing Rudolph. I wasn't there. I was at work when you guys had started playing, and our friend Joe was like playing with the group. By the time I had gotten off of work, though, Joe had to leave, so our characters literally just like magically swapped places. So all of a sudden, I was in this mansion, like with no context. Everybody was like looking for some mystery, but that gave me a like. I like to think a more unique perspective on the whole situation than the rest of the players, because everybody else was kind of on one train of thinking and they were focused on, more obvious clues. And I forget who it was, but somebody got their arm stuck in a wall.
That was like Kenny Leone.
Yes, sir. And they were all like trying to figure out like all of these like weird magical clues. But then Rudolph got an opportunity to kind of do his own investigative work. And I remember there was like a room, there was a piano, and a tapestry. And I spent so much time in that room because there was something about it that I needed to figure out. And lo and behold, I burned down the tapestry and there was like a secret door or something, some secrets behind there. And that was, in general, the whole vibe of that game, the murder mystery, the suspense of not having any weapons, but then still being forced into like a sort of combat position towards the end of it. It was really, really cool. And then, eventually when we needed an explanation, I was, of course, the guy standing behind Pagoti's dad with a gun to his head, trying to force him to talk, even though he could have no doubt just like stepped on me.
Yeah, well, I do remember that Pagoti's dad, whose name I don't remember because I just put him in that one game, he wasn't like a menacing figure, but he was like a very powerful wizard, and that was the whole premise of it. Because like Pagoti as an NPC hadn't seen his family in years, and then his dad randomly invited them to this thing, and it was just like a sick way to see if Pagoti still cared because he pretended to die. And that's what Leo was saying when he turned into water, because that spell at the end of it, you turn into water when the clone spell goes up. And he was just traversing back and forth between the walls. And that's what David found out with the piano door. And then, oh man, I can't remember Kenny's character, but when he,
I think his name was Fish, right? Was that him, or was Fish from a different?
Fish was from a different campaign where I played a life cleric and I killed him on accident.
I know that he was a paladin, but I forget his exact name.
Yeah, I remember he was Mo. His name was Mo.
It was Mo. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, Mo. The basics behind it, and I'll try to keep the logic short because I was trying to like finagle this crazy way for this thing to happen, this game to work. And to really express like the way that magic can really work in D&D. So I put a bunch of magic items on this motherfucker. This crazy wizard who could essentially manipulate time stop so that he can keep messing with you guys so that it's harder to find out. And Kenny had the idea he heard something slam like next to him, but he couldn't see it. So he was like, what happened? And that's because the door was slamming during his like time stop motion. He was doing the thing to shut the door. And so Kenny was like, I'm going to put my arm in the general direction where I hear the noise. And I'm like, are you sure, my main man? And then he did it, and he got his arm cut off, and he passed out because he failed his Constitution saves. So he couldn't even explain to you guys what happened because he was passed out. And that's when the game really got crazy. And Pagoti was like, what the fuck's going on, But that game was a lot of fun. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I kind of want to get into NPCs really because I think that's where the general direction of a story goes with this game. In the beginning, you guys would go every Wednesday in real life to this tavern called Pagoti's Tavern, and in the very beginning of it, that was the only lively thing in town, if you remember, because it was such a deadbeat like Riverport town that nobody cared about, and it was the only place that people could go and hang out and enjoy themselves. There's like the honky-tonk piano and Pagoti working by himself, and he was just this big like 6'4", like 280, 300-pound man, human, who was just like all around a really nice guy. And he would give you guys missions every week. You'd pick and choose, and then eventually he started hiring you for his own stuff. But there's a lot of NPCs in town, and I don't want to harp on speaking about all of them. I just want to talk about the ones that you guys liked the most. So, and answer any questions you have about that, because I know you didn't get to keep going and find out more and more. But that's like one of the hardest parts about being a DM. Is sometimes when you create a long campaign like that, you don't get to show your characters, your players, everything about the NPCs. So, yeah, I guess what questions do you guys have? What was your favorite NPC? What was your least favorite NPC? We'll start with Nicky this time.
Obviously, I think favorite one has to be Pagoti. Man, he's only ever owned one boat in his lifetime, and so another story about that.
God.
So yeah, the first time I played in Quezdefart was with Carl, who was played by Matt Fry. It's the same mission where we went to go take out the two bandit leaders, and it was across the river or the lake, something of the sort. And so we needed a boat to get there. And so the only person in town that we knew how to boat was Pagodi. So we go and ask him. He's like, yeah, sure. If it's for the mission, go take it. And just make sure it's not scratched and bring it back. And we're like, okay, yeah, no problem. But then pirates attack us in the middle of a lake. Interesting lake. But it ends up both of the boats basically just as we're going to like towards the shore that we're approaching, we kill all the pirates, but both boats are basically in disarray and just sinking, and then we have to jump off and just get there. And we make it to the shore, and the boat's just completely gone, and we're like, oh, well, we'll deal with this later. And then proceed to disguise ourselves as guards with no information and basically get caught and just kill people. But that's not the interesting part. After that, we go back to Pagodi, and we get back as the town's being raided by like another one of the bandits. And then Pagodi asks, oh, where's my boat? And we just, me and Carl have to make rolls, and we just say, what boat? And then Pagodi, we roll just high enough for Pagodi to be like, what? And just never remember his boat again.
It was not just high enough. It was like I planned on not letting that happen at all because, who the hell forgets they own a boat? But it was not just high enough. One or both of you rolled a crit 20, and I was like, well, shit. What boat? And that was terrible for me, but that was really
well, I think
funny.
we were just like, what boat? The one you have right there? Or something like that. Lucky a raid was going on in the town, and then a fun 500 HP boss for level 3 characters happened after that.
I could take a wild guess at what Nicky's least favorite NPC was, and it starts with an A.
Angelica?
Maybe something like that. Maybe
Okay.
give it another go, maybe?
Agnes.
Good in there.
Yeah,
so Nicky's least favorite NPC was probably Anavir, who was Tessa's sister. And they were basically big bads. They were the daughters of the big bad, and they didn't know that at the time because they thought they were just thieves. And so Nicky started flirting with her, what the hell am I saying? And that was only like a year into her game, and it lasted for 2 more years after that. So you can only imagine how many interactions Nicky had with Tess. But in-game, he hated Anavir, and he pretended like he never knew her name. But actually, I think he genuinely didn't remember her name.
Me myself, Nicky,
Nicky
forgot the name once, and then I just never committed the name to memory again. Kevin also just never remembered the name because he didn't care. So
yeah.
Even right now, I only remember it actually started with an Anne, because that's how much he's dumb and stupid.
Yeah, well, that was just super comical. I feel like for everyone playing, like for every single interaction you had with Anavir, you were like, Angelica, or Angus, just like the stupidest shit ever. What about you, David?
Well, Pagodi, the goat. But I'd say I have a bit more of an interesting perspective on the NPCs because during our time playing, you let me DM one game. And so with that, I got a little bit of like insider access to some of the NPCs' backstories. And so from when I was like reading through a bunch of those backstories, the one that really, really struck me that like as the most well developed or like well thought out at the time was Norstar. And that just continued. That continued for the rest of the game. Every interaction with him just got better and better, whether it was comical or serious or, whatever direction you decided to take it, between him, like being a frail old man in his repair shop to literally a god in the ethereal plane. It was, he was quite a fun NPC to interact with, particularly when he sucked us into his magical plant dimension and made us fight his displacer beast pet or whatever it was, Celestial Panther, whatever the hell.
Yeah, it was a Celestial Panther. That was a really fun time. That was yeah, he came in and opened a repair store in Quezdefart, and there's this spell called Transport via Plants, and you can move from one plane to another or from one area to another within like 500 miles. And that just struck me as interesting. Like I felt like I could do something important with that, so I made him be like an ancestral guardian of certain kinds. Not literally, because that's a barbarian thing, but be like an ancestral spirit from the ethereal plane. And he was simply trying to get to Quezdefart to stay hidden because it was such a small town, and like someone was hunting him in the ethereal plane. He was like, "Fuck it, I'm out." So, so he came into Quezdefart. But yeah, I liked his character arc as well, because it was almost like a Kratos type thing where like he came to Earth, the material plane, and wound up like loving the people that were there, and then helped like defend you guys against the big bad, which we haven't even brought up yet. But
yeah, his whole story with, you know, his old war, and I forget his friend's name who died, but then he became like
Seoth.
Yeah, Seoth. He
the
became
little skeleton man.
Mm-hmm. He Seoth's soul was placed into this skeleton, and then North Star is like this ever living being who's like tortured by his past. It struck me as really, really cool, and to see like all of the things you were able to do within mostly canon Dungeons and Dragons lore as well, like the amount of like flexibility you presented around this character's backstory was super, super cool. And also his blind son Ernest was another highlight.
I loved Ernest. I think Ernest was like my favorite NPC. And thank you, by the way. I appreciate that, what you said. But yeah, to really break it down, North Star was involved in an old war that actually happened in D&D lore between orcs and was it orcs? I can't remember because it's been so long since I read it. But it was the war with Vecna over Vecna's body, and then as he blew up, his eye and hand got like separated as like super powerful magical items in D&D. Like to date, they're still in the game, and he was involved in that war. He helped split up the final battle, but in turn, he actually killed his friend on accident, and the magic from Vecna got imbued in him, and he became immortal because of it. And he didn't want to be, but he was, and that was kind of his whole deal. But he had Ernest, who I don't know if you want to talk about Ernest a little bit.
Yeah, he was like his blind son who he kept almost prisoned in the ethereal plane. I can't really remember the specifics of it, but basically when we were drawn into the magical plant that pulled us to the ethereal plane, the big thing happened and we weren't able to get back out. So North Star had to introduce us to Ernest, and Ernest, through his like insane magical ability, was able to get us out of the ethereal plane back into the material plane. And from that moment, I knew he was going to be, as we were like winding down in the campaign, like you could tell something big was going to happen, and that he was going to have some involvement in it. And so like some of the things he did during like the final battle, and just in general, his existence and his relationship to North Star, really was like super, super cool to me, and has influenced me a lot in the way that I think about my NPCs when I'm, you know, creating stories and, you know, all that good stuff.
Yeah, Ernest was cool. I think my favorite part about him as an NPC was the thing that is hard to do as an actual PC, which is playing your character with blind vision.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what he had. He was blind, but he had blind vision within a 10-foot radius. And that's an actual mechanic in the game, but I decided to like amplify that a little bit to make him actually like important, where while he's spellcasting, he's a storm cleric. So whenever he was casting, there would be wind around him, and he would use that to increase his blind vision, and that's kind of how he saw during battle, if you remember. But that was like a lot of fun to DM.
The thing I remember most about Ernest is just him trying to cast a spell during battle, then being brought into like this hurricane and just being basically slapped around by the final boss.
Yeah, I remember that. That was the final boss battle, which is the last thing we're finally going to talk about soon. Um, Webweaver and Anna and Tess. And yeah, Ernest, his turn finally came in combat, and he casted, man, I can't remember what the name of the spell is. It's like Greater Storm or something like that. And he messed up. He got pulled in, got effed up by Webweaver. And then Norstar, his dad, casted Windwalk and walked into the storm and punched Webweaver in the face. And that was probably my favorite like NPC on NPC interaction. But
Yeah, that was super sick.
Enough of that. Leo, hit me, baby.
All right, so I'm gonna be honest right away. I didn't have a whole lot of experience with the NPCs, but when I did, like get to interact with them, I loved all of them. Like I really liked all of them. But like my favorites, the ones that stood out, were definitely Pagodi. I got a lot of like his backstory, and I just thought like he was a really cool guy, and I liked his whole like family thing that he had. He was just really, really cool. Like I don't know, like just generally like I would like to hang out with Pagodi. Like he's just like a cool guy. I really loved North Star, and got to experience a lot of like North Star's cool ability. I got a taste of that in the last fight. As we just talked about. And for some reason, I really liked Seoth. It's a big fan. I thought it was cool. Like there was before like basically like the town kind of went away, fell apart. Seoth, you would go into like a store. There was a store with like two split sides. It was like I think it was the same building, but it was just split down the middle essentially. And in one side you had I think like potions, and the other side was scrolls, right?
You had Mr. What's It To You.
What's It To You? I liked him too. Yeah, that was a good dynamic, those two. And like so one of the stores you get a crazy, old man who like he's just like all over the place, and he's just crazy. And you walk into the other store and it's Seoth, which is like this little skeleton guy. And when you walk out of the store, you hear like whispers in your head. And that was just cool to me. Like I thought it was cool. It had like an NPC that like just kind of whispered in your head every now and then. Like it was funny. And lastly, one that left an impression on me was the random old man, like the homeless guy that was in the jail cell, ended up like giving us magic items at the end. Like randomly. Thavema.
It was Thavema.
Yeah, Thavema's my boy.
I almost forgot about Thavema until we started recording this, because I looked through my list of stock for stores from this campaign, and I saw like a list of random magic items which I gave out in the final battle. And I was like, how did they get those? And I was like, oh my god, Thavema. Like I totally forgot, because since day one of the campaign, I had this old man in the cells in the prison, and no one ever spoke to him. They went down, they've seen him before.
Except Rudy,
Nicky.
when he was in jail for a week. Rudy talked to him exclusively.
I also talked to him, except I think the only thing I said to him was, I suggest you stop talking, because Tess was in jail and he kept making noise.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, lo and behold, he wound up just staying there because he didn't want to pay rent somewhere else to live. And he's just some crazy old guy like Boomy from Avatar. And when you guys started suiting up your final mission, he was like, you guys want some magic items? And he gave you guys some crazy magic stuff. But that was a lot of fun. I kind of want to get to the actual progression of the story to wrap things up here.
Can I bring up one more thing about NPCs?
Yes, yeah. I actually want to, before you do that, I want to ask you guys after this, is there a question, since I'm the DM in this interview, I guess, is there a question that you guys have for me about an NPC that you never got to find out, but you wanted to, or like, just like a piece of criticism, anything really. Go ahead, Nicky.
What happened to Conqueror Kind? This is what I was going to ask before, but just now, what happened to Conqueror Kind in the end?
Conqueror Kind? Why don't I even remember that?
Was that Pickle's character in like the Pagodi backstory game
Yes,
that we
yes, it
played?
was.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. He like betrayed all of us. We were a group of
that.
pirates, and then we get to Quezdefart, and me and Nicky both get killed because we're trying to do the right thing, and Pickle's just like Pickle's a friend of ours that we just call Pickle, but Pickle's just like, nah, I'm gonna side with the bad guys. Fuck you all.
I remember that. Yeah, I forgot about that for a second because we did a segment called Before the Tavern. For anyone listening, that we explored NPCs' backstories, like from day one, like how they got into town, and we did one about Pagodi, how he got into town, and all the players played evil pirates, and yeah, that was funny. Conqueror Kind. That was so stupid.
But what I was going to ask before that, or what I was going to talk about before that, is the GameStop.
Oh, what about the GameStop? What do you want to know?
Just like, how'd that come about? Like, where's the idea from that? And also, what was who owned it? I think I mentioned it once, but
okay.
Because I remember there was always a person in there, and you never left the employee.
Yeah, so the employee didn't own it. So basically what the GameStop was a GameStop. It was a place to go and buy game. Not games, game. Like food, meat, anything. And you could just buy food there. So I called it GameStop because it was funny. And the idea for it came up because I saw this really shitty GameStop ad where you could get like in-store credit for like returning a game. And then I was like, game, hunting, D&D, GameStop, what's up? And that was when I was writing the initial story. So I made the place called GameStop, and it was actually ran by Grungle the Orc, I think, if you remember.
The chef?
Yeah, and he was a bardic chef. And when you guys met him, you initially thought he was like a barbarian or something, but he was just like a bard that loved cooking, and he was super nice. But then he eventually hired a guy, an NPC who I literally just named Zach. And he was a classic GameStop employee that was like, I don't know, man. Let me check in the back. No, we don't have it.
Without actually not give less of a shit about his job.
Yeah. But the thing is that he would never leave. It was just there like all the time, and there was no reason for that.
Well, I remember like after the 5-year time skip kind of thing when we were in North Star's dimension, the astral plane. We come back, everything's like basically destroyed. They're living in the ground for 5 years. But then we go up and we check on the GameStop, and just in pristine condition, he's still in there.
I forgot I did that. Yeah, that was really funny. Well, anyone else? Oh, what's up?
But also, another funny thing was just, the power up rewards card. How when you got that, you had to pay a fee for the card, and it made everything 20% more. But when you explained it, you just like said it in like super fast talking, like GameStop talk, and you just like, yeah, so you get the power rewards card, then you get to pay 2 more gold for the rabbit, and want to buy yourself a 20. It's just interesting thing. I like that thing.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. You talked about a 5-year time skip, and that deals heavily with the story. But the reason why I'm saying it for last is because it's a pretty I don't want to say it in pieces. I'd rather just say it all in a row. But what about you, David or Leo? Do you have any questions for me about NPCs or anything?
All right. Well, I was gonna say that the GameStop employee was probably my least favorite of the NPCs. Neither of my characters ever really interacted with him much, so most of what I knew of him was just listening to everyone else interact with him, and it kind of pulled me out of my immersion. But that's just because I'm a huge fantasy nerd. Everybody else was having a great time with it, so I didn't make a whole big stink about it. But the Darringtons. I think it would be a crime to go this entire time without like actually talking about them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So from the beginning of the game, there's these two brothers, and they own stores that are connected by a bridge. One sells armor and shields, one sells weapons. The one who sells armor and shields is named Stanley. The one who sells weapons is named Flex. You never see him in the same room at the same time. When one store is open, the other one's closed. And they both look and talk exactly the same, just with slightly different personalities. Like it's kind of a cliche, but not really. Like, how did you really get the idea to put in a character who's got like multiple personality disorder?
Well, I actually have the same question for you later, but I when I was making these characters, I was like, well, I think it'd be cool to have like a classic like brother, like a family-owned store or a mom and pop store of some kind in this town, because it'd make it like homey, it would make it interesting that there's like a sense of community and family when I was making this. But then I thought more, and when I was making Flex's character, I whenever I made an NPC, I made them 4 levels higher than you guys constantly, because I was afraid of murder hobos, because to be realistic, 14 people in one campaign, someone's going to do it. But surprisingly, nobody did. But throughout the whole time, it kept everyone 4 levels higher than you guys. So some were multi-classed, and Flex was a fighter and a ranger. And so I think he was a Gloom Strider. And something that came with that was that he traversed the plains protecting. He was like a planar protector of certain kind. And that made me think of this concept of, well, what if something went wrong when he was traversing the plains? And that was something you guys just never found out about him, that something went wrong, like he took damage while he was casting and shifting planes, and something went wrong in his head. His brother died, and that's canon, like Stanley actually died, but the entire time he would just go back and forth. As soon as he walked through that door to go from store to store, something in his head would magically happen to make him genuinely think he was the other person. And it was just kind of interesting. And I know that you guys had suspicions about it, but no one actually found out for real.
Yeah, the entirety of the game, there was at least one person that criticized, like, oh, you're definitely your brother. Like, you're definitely both of them. And you played it off so well, because as a newer DM, I don't think I'd be able to hold it up that long. I would have definitely cracked. But literally from day one to the very end, until we were done with the campaign, you never ever actually said that they were the same person. And that was one of like those little mysteries in a D&D game that doesn't really get you to play, but it gets you to keep playing, because it's like, oh, well, maybe this will be something important, or maybe it's something that will come up down the line that'll be, useful to know.
I actually didn't realize that until the session that was revealed, like beforehand, when people started talking about it, because every single time like that question came up, there'd be like Stanley or Flex would have like a reasonable excuse. Like when I went to go see Stanley, we're like, oh, it's weapons shop open. And then they're like, oh no, Flex is going on the camping trip. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I think Flex like did go on the camping trip for a part of it. And so it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Or, oh no, this thing's going on in town. It's like, oh, cool. I just thought they were like some random brother.
Look, I'm happy you said that, because I was trying to do more than just like, no, that's not me. That's not me. I was trying to give situations where it actually would be believable. So like Stanley would be working and then be like, oh, Flex is going camping. And then he actually went camping with you guys because he thought he had to go camping. Like as soon as he walked through his door, he's like, oh shit, I'm Flex now. And then he'd go camping, and then he'd come home and just like forget. And yeah, so that makes me know it worked. It's just
one more thing I wanted to mention. You mentioned the murder hobo thing, and I think the closest thing we had to that was with Stanley Darrington, where the person that joined for a single session just went in there and stole the armor.
Yeah, that was
he couldn't wear.
Yeah, that was Ryan.
That was a funny thing to happen.
He stole a full plate, It was like a 1,500 gold full plate, and then we put wanted signs up, and then he never showed up for another session again.
Yeah,
So I was like, that's so funny.
my man showed up for one session, broke into Flex's side of the store while Stanley's was open, and snuck in through the back, saw the bedroom, and then went through the other store and stole the armor and somehow got away with it.
Yeah, yeah. What about you, Leo? You got any questions before we move into what actually happened in this campaign?
I guess yeah. I actually, since we were like on Thaba earlier, I couldn't stop thinking about him. How did he like? What's his? Did you have a backstory for him? Because he had like this carriage and like Sayoth was involved and like what was his deal? You know.
Yeah. So Thavma, again, because we said a lot of names in such a short time. Thavma was the prisoner in the jail, and he was just there the whole time. But he built a NPC on NPC relationship with Sayoth, the little skeleton man that ran the trinket store, because he would communicate telepathically with him. And Sayoth would like talk to him while he was in jail and be like, "What's going on, buddy?" And they were like the only people in town that were actually friends. And Thavma, low key, could leave the prison whenever he wanted because he was a drunken way of the drunk monk, and so he would just slide between the bars and like move and leave and come back as he pleased. And like sometimes he would go out with Sayoth, and because Sayoth owned that magical cart, if you remember, where you bought magic items from.
Yeah.
And Thavma helped him create that cart because Thavma had a bunch of magic items stored in the cave he went to in the final mission. And that's kind of their relationship with each other, which you never really got to explore because there's just so much. But
wow, very glad I asked that question. That's really cool, man. So much to that.
Yeah, I don't know if I guess here's my question for you guys, because like I tried to make a campaign that was like very optional in a sense, where like you could explore whoever you really wanted to. Do you think that at any point in time there's like too much, or do you think it was like too forced, or do you think that there was just so much about certain people that you could never find out?
I personally think that there was a whole lot of every interaction with every NPC revealed something. It was never, whether it was like a little thing about their personality, like maybe just some little quirk that they had, or it was some like hint to their backstory or who they actually were. So I think that you handled that really, really well, and it's something that I try to emulate when I'm DMing. Because you were my only DM for like 3 years, so if you were if this opinion matters to you, I've taken a lot of that information to the way that I role play my NPCs. Like, okay, every interaction doesn't necessarily have to be the most important, but it has to be relevant enough to get the PCs to ask little questions, like things in the back of their mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think you pulled that off spectacularly.
Thanks,
that's just my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet. I want to get into the story. I had no idea how long this thing would go on because it's episode 1. I feel like I have a great feeling that these episodes are going to be like an hour to 2 hours long, which is like more than okay. I've listened to podcasts that are 4 hours long, but I want to talk about the story because what I think one of my favorite quotes from something that I've read in a game was let me pull it up real quick. I love this paragraph. It was something that I read the very last time we ever played together, and it said it all started with a group of travelers coming together on a fine Wednesday night in a rundown Riverport town. No, let's say it was a rundown 5 miles shy of a Riverport town. And then I go off to talk about all the people you met, and it just really made me like appreciate the story that we built together. Like another thing I read was meeting a plethora of people from Pagodi to Mr. Hall, Lenny, Grungle, Bart, then Zach at GameStop. Elysiana at the inn, Annadette at the recreational field, What's It to Ya, Elaine the farmer, to little no-name skeleton man of pure evil energy. You guys didn't know his name at the time. And it just like blew my mind how much like we actually wrote together, because half of these characters I didn't know what I wanted to do with them until like I saw you interact with them, and that was like a really really great experience to me. But no, basically it did start out as just that, just people getting together every Wednesday night to play D&D and play with different DMs, learn how to play, and then eventually it started to evolve when I DM'd a game for I think just Matt and Nicky, where they had to break into a museum and I couldn't remember if it was steal something before a thief could steal it, or just prevent a thief from stealing it. But that was really like the start of when the game started to develop. Nikki, do you remember that mission? It was when you first met Tess and Anavir. You had to go into a museum.
I don't think we were breaking into a museum. The first time we met them was when the raid was happening on the town, but Goody told us about the 4 bandit leaders.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Then we went into their like tower, like their little like stone stronghold kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had the and whatever portals, and then, or that was Tessa's thing, I forget. But,
yeah, they were both like related. They were sisters, so basically they had like teleportation powers where Anavir could teleport from place to place, but Tess could switch places with people, and that was kind of their twist. Yeah, the museum mission came later, but yeah, you're right. It was like at that mission where I started to realize like, oh, these two NPCs are really cool. I should make them into a villain. But then I thought there wasn't enough body to them, like to make them the big bad. But they kept coming up naturally, so I thought, okay, well, what if they're the daughters of a big bad? And that's when I created Webweaver. And then I noticed that through passive missions, I made a few bad things happen in the world, like the dragon breaking free, and like a stone getting stolen, a statue getting destroyed. And these are all from different people playing, so some of you might not have even been there. But eventually I broke it down to 5 bad things that happened. And then I created one more, which was these 2 statues, the famine and the feast, where Webweaver was attempting to use them to summon his big bad, like his boss, to come and basically like consume the earth, very like Cthulhu style. And the story just escalated from there, of you guys trying to save the planet and like undo all these bad things. And I enjoyed it. I loved how like fast paced it became and this and that. But I think that where it really started to get crazy was when you guys went to see North Star in a store. You attacked his plant, or attacked back at his plant. You killed it, and it sent you in a rift to North Star in the ethereal plane, and you guys couldn't get back because you killed the second plant he used to do transport via plants. And that was a cool thing I thought of to do with that. And then that's when you met his son, and that's when Leo was all alone. And if Leo, maybe you recall what happened in that 5-year gap, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Sure, yeah. So basically, I'm a little fuzzy on the details. I have to like maybe pull something up, but I do remember like a good amount of it. So basically, we were others left like entirely the dimension we were on, and we we so it was like up to me and like the NPCs to like kind of, just like, I guess we were existing in the town for a bit, but then people came and they like marked up the town with like these like markings, and they like destroyed everything, and it was crazy. And after that happened, we basically went underground to like hide out, and came out every so often to do different things and like gather resources and look for the others, I guess in that time period, and that was 5 years. And Yeah, that's basically like that's the summary of it. But like when I got like the scoop, I was basically told like the town was destroyed. There was red markings and like all over the town, and we didn't find out what that was until like the very end, which was like it was basically used. The town happened to be in a very unfortunate location for a grand. I guess you can call it not really a ritual, but just like the summoning of
Summoning, yeah.
yeah of
Yeah.
the great beast that would consume the earth.
Yeah. No, you explained it really well. I know it sounds very cliche, but I thought that was something nice to like end on like a big bad occurrence to try and stop and prevent, because there's nothing like feeling like heroic for literally saving the earth. And I made this concept because my favorite hero, one of my favorite heroes, is Silver Surfer. And so it gave me the idea because the Silver Surfer is basically like a beacon for this huge like terrible thing, and I wanted to kind of like take that and implement it here in the story where Webweaver is essentially summoning the equivalent of Cthulhu to come to Earth and destroy it, and he's been so like overrun by evil he doesn't even know what he's doing anymore. And you guys like fought him in this big battle. He wound up befriending Tess, which I mean we'll get to and talk about. But David, this is where like LaPretney, your new character, really comes into effect because spoiler alert, you guys beat Webweaver, but you introduce a new character after your wacky tabaxi. And I want to hear about LaPretney. Like, what was the whole deal with that, and why did you choose to make your character have two different personalities?
Yeah. So first off, with Rudolph, I decided to stop playing him because he didn't really mesh well with the group. His personality was like super contentious, and I could only take it so far. And the gunslinger class leaves a lot to be desired, especially in big fights. I've noticed through playtesting the class a little more. They can't really do a whole lot against one big enemy. So I decided to switch to a ranger to occupy the same role, to sort of fit the same deal of like, okay, I'm support from a distance, but now I have a little bit more to do. I have the ranger spell list, and with the Gloomstalker subclass from the Xanathar source book, it added so many cool flavor things. And so as I was building the character, I started with the class, and then I looked through races, and I found the shifter race, which I forget which source book it's from, but it's from some other like 5th edition source book, maybe like the Adventurer's Guide
to. I think it's Unearthed Arcana, actually.
I
might be wrong.
It might be an Unearthed Arcana thing. I'm not really sure. But basically their whole shtick is that like they're not lycanthropes. They're somewhere in between, so they have like natural abilities that are similar to animals. And there's a couple different versions. The one I went with was I had a lot of advantage on like tracking things, and I had an ability where I could mark the scent of somebody and pinpoint their location for a certain radius. So those two things worked really well together, the Gloomstalker and this hunting based class. So from there, I started to develop the backstory of this young person who lived in a tribe, and their whole idea, they were a small tribe. There was only a few dozen of them, and their whole way of life was to grow within the tribe until a very young age, like only like 10 or 11 years old, and then be sent out to integrate into society to try to expand their territory. And so from that, those were like the small pieces. Now, when I was thinking of a new character, because I had already known I wanted to get rid of Rudolph, the idea came to me to have a character that switched alignments. It wasn't necessarily a personality thing at first. It was an alignment thing. So to have a good character in combat switch to a very, very bad character, and to to sort of expand on that, I thought, well, how would that work? And obviously, the first thing your mind goes to is being possessed. So my original idea for Lopretny, and I'll try to tie this in without rambling too long, but the original idea for Lopretny was that after he left his tribe, he found another group of adventurers, and I gave them all, their own backstory because I'm a huge dork like that. But within this tribe of adventurers, they traveled together for, like a few years until they eventually got hired to do a job in this old tomb that, nobody had been to in, forever or whatever. And there was some ancient, treasure in there. And so they go through the whole thing and get to the room, with all the treasure and whatnot. And Lopretny ends up getting possessed by this ancient warlord who has been, dead for thousands, maybe millions of years, who even knows, who's just been biding his time and waiting for a vessel to come to take over them and then to take over the world. So Lopretny ended up being that vessel. He got possessed. He ended up killing his entire party through the eyes of this warlord named Agamemnon. And so in the aftermath of that, Lopretny had no idea what was going on. Oh, and the other thing with the possession too, I thought it would be really cool to have a character with a sleeve of tattoos that moved, and so that was like a big detail. Lopretny had a big sleeve of tattoos to represent like his tribe and all of the things he's killed, and just general scenes of nature. And when Agamemnon's personality took over and sort of came to the forefront, all of the animals and things died. It was all skulls and blood and dark colors. But
hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, to get along with it, we got to talking a whole lot about about the backstory, and that was really it. The whole idea was just for it to be like a fun little gimmick, a cool shtick of the character. But obviously a character with such like a unique thing to them, that attracts the attention of a DM. And so we got to talking, and that led to a lot of your changes to where Agamemnon was not an ancient warlord, but he was actually the third child of Webweaver. He was his son. And then, there was the whole deal of him being sent to Faerun to be, part of the beacon process for whatever the big monster was. And in that process, he, I forget exactly what the detail was, but the personality.
He had touched everything was true, or he got possessed by this statue, but it was actually the statue of light, like famine, the statue of famine at the end, and you had touched it, thousands of years back, and gotten possessed by an earthly being, and that was like, it was the exact opposite of what you told me your character was about, and that's why I was trying to like surprise you in a sense when I like revealed it to you, rather than it being like oh yeah, this is what possessed me. I want to like really throw a screwball at everybody, and that's kind of like how I thought it was going to go.
Yeah, but that was super, super awesome to have my original idea just to be like some sort of like throwaway gimmick, to be this super nice guy out of combat. But then when we fought, I was chaotic evil. I was just going to kill everything, not give a shit about what I did. And eventually that led to a really, really awesome and cool moment. And if I'm allowed to ramble just a little bit longer, that level of interaction between you and I with my character, again, has been super, super eye-opening to what D&D really like is to me.
Yeah.
The way that I think about the game now, that shaped so much of it.
Yeah. Nicky and Leo, I'm so sorry, but like Lopretny's character.
That's my bad.
Lopretny's character is like, I feel like really important for the development of like his like the story. And like everyone had their own experience, I think, and I think your big experience was with Lopretny. You actually taught me like very niche, like interesting thing to do too, because I was like, how can I reveal this to David like out of character without revealing it to everyone else? Because we were all playing at the same time, and I was like, well, even if I have like a wall break and like rocks separate them so that David can find out alone, still hearing it in like the fourth wall, That's when I got the idea to like being, comp sci. I programmed a D&D like simulation for you to play like a one-off by yourself with like an automated DM to like have a conversation with Anavir, the daughter, your sister, and like find out through her like, oh shit, like we're related. You know, how's that like as an overall experience for you?
That was really cool and super creative, like a really creative way to do that. That's something that you as a DM, I feel like you were really, really good at coming up with super creative ways to do pretty basic stuff. You know, this is something that we could have just had as a conversation. It's something that we could have just decided on together. But instead you decided to enhance the experience for everybody by making it a big secret and going about it with this so much more effort than actually needed. But it paid off. It paid off so well in the end because I feel like it created a cool moment for all of our characters and the NPCs included. You know, so now it's like, oh, this fucking guy, he's Webweaver's son. Of course, all the bad shit happens when he shows up. You know, so I just it was super super cool, and there was not a day while we were still playing Quezdefart that I didn't think about Lepretny and his backstory and his connection to the story and how he affected all of the rest of everything. So thank you very much for giving me that awesome experience.
Yeah, stop sucking my dick.
Yeah, fuck you, you stupid idiot.
Roll initiative. I want to talk about like because you like Kevin, I mean like Kevin and like Boognish, you guys had your like own character arcs, but I feel like they were like little by little, day by day, and that's why like I wanted to talk about Lepretny's a lot because it was very rushed. But I think that what I really want to talk about is the final fight, like the final, like the big bang battle with Webweaver, Anavir, and quote unquote Tess. Like, I could talk about the fight for days, so I don't want to. But maybe if anyone feels confident enough to like talk about the fight and like how it happened, um, feel free. If not, I'll like ramble.
Ramble.
Okay. Leo, you want to say something?
You got it.
Okay. Yeah, so essentially, you guys finally found out all this stuff. You found out like that that Webweaver was trying to summon this greater evil to consume the planet, and then you finally you challenge him. He shows up to do it, to like put all this sigil magic together and create this portal to summon this thing, and you guys are there to stop him. And it's just a very elongated, I think it was like a 3 or 4 hour long, like in real life battle. And it wound up going like really, really interestingly because I think specifically because of the magic items you guys had in the combat. Like specifically, I don't know if you guys remember them, but the Dove of Plenty and the smart water bottle.
we talk about the Dove of Plenty literally all the time. All the time.
Someone tell me about it. Someone tell me about like what happened and how like fucking hilarious it was.
David, do you want to explain your part? Then me and Leo can explain the part we did because we kind of transferred. We did in the battle because you wanted to go a bit faster. You had us do our turns in groups of 2. It was David and Pickle, and then my character Kevin, and then Leo's character Boognish. So
I'll try to keep this even more short because I've been talking way too much. But basically, Pickle had the Dove of Plenty, which when it landed on something, it created 1d100 copies of it. I had a magical arrow that on a natural 20, it like outright killed like fiends, aberrations, like undead, like a certain group of monster types. So Pickle had the idea, this is all him, this was like 100% his idea, that I would shoot the arrow at the monsters and he would ready the dove to fly past and touch the arrow and then fly off of it, so it would create a bunch of copies of it. So I obviously we went through with the plan, and I rolled the first attack roll and I got a crit fail. Which immediately like killed me. But the Gloomstalker has a really, really dumb ability that on its first attack, on it like its first turn of combat, if it misses an attack, it can just re-roll the attack for free. it can just do it again. So I re-rolled the attack, and lo and behold, I got a natural 20. Pickle created 76 copies of the arrow, and on the very first turn of combat, because I had like a fucking 30 for my initiative roll or something, on the first turn of combat, more than half of the monsters on the field were dead.
Yeah, that was absolutely nuts. And he killed Webweaver's pet. That was a phase spider. Like, at least I had so many fun things planned for it, and then I was like, oh shit. Well, okay. It had like 200 health, but it was still a basic fiend. So I was like, okay. I mean, I was like, all right, shit.
Yeah. It was just I felt kind of bad, but
no, that's like
it
the thing
felt
you gotta suck up.
so good though.
Yeah,
it felt
dude.
so good.
Nicky and Leo, what happened with your guys' turn? The big thing.
Well, I think we started out with a big bang, right? Well, what did you do first, Leo? What's the first thing you did? Well, actually, let me set the stage. The first thing Webweaver did was he created like half a bridge of like web. I think Pagodi or North Star like summoned the bridge of like stone or earth or something like that into it.
It was a stone wall, and he cast it as a very high level spell. And it basically, like, cinematically, the half of bridge of web collided with the half of bridge of stone, and that's when the battle started.
And then Webweaver walked onto it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then go, Leo.
Well, okay, so I think really the biggest moment, I just want to go straight to the meat. Like, the biggest moment we had was you kind of like pulled me aside and, like, you know, in real life, and like you kind of like formulated this plan together. You had this spell that could turn me into like a monster of like any kind, like a different creature of any kind.
Oh my god, I forgot about it.
Or like specific kinds, but there's like a lot of options. And you wanted to turn me into like basically a T-Rex. And you know, you were able to successfully do that. So you turned me into that, and then you get on me and we ride like towards the action really fast. And I think I snap at something along the way, and then like on the second turn I go to like bite. I think I go to attack Webweaver. But then at that point I get knocked out. But it gets you within range to do some crazy damage yourself. So that was like a big thing, because I think the reason why this was like a huge deal for us is because we were like knocked way out of like the battle, right? Remember that? It was like we were knocked like 200 feet or something, like way back, and the T-Rex had like crazy movement, like even faster than the monk, because it's huge, and we were to run up. And even though I got knocked out, it put you within range to do like massive damage to the boss. You did like 80 damage in one go. So
it's actually the reverse order. So the first thing that we did was I pulled you aside, and then we practiced doing the fusion dance real quick.
Yes.
Because our first turn, I casted haste on both of us because I could twin spells as a sorcerer, and so we did the fusion dance, and then Bugnish ran up, and I think you hit Webweaver like 4 different times, just like pummeling him.
Yeah, it was flurry of blows.
Yep.
And so you just kept whacking him, like just. I think you did like 40 damage just with that. But then right at the end of it, you just cocked your head to the side as I just casted Disintegrate into him and did like 83 damage just into his shoulder, just blowing a literal hole in him.
That was the first thing, and that was so cool. I almost.
Yeah, that was like nuts. I remember because you did flurry of blows, and you guys physically like acted out what you were doing, and then Leo, you just went like this. And then I saw Nicky behind you going.
It was so great. It was like I went for like an uppercut, and then Nicky came at me with that.
That was nuts. That was so fun. I think this whole battle was just like it opened my eyes too about like how important it is to build up like an enemy to be like this big deal and make you like want to fight him, because I think the whole fight in general was just so entertaining, and then making like Lenny the Kenku fly in with reinforcements, and one of them was the sun dragon that you fought in the past, Nikki, and it was just like everything like reconvening to like one final location from beginning to end. Everything was there, and I loved that. That was like my favorite part about everything. What were you saying, Nikki?
Oh, but the other funny thing about the dragon, this is going all the way back to the race mission, but it was funny because when we did the race mission, the dragon happened, and then that's where we ended the session. And so then, like, I think it was like a couple of weeks or a month after, and then we got back to them, like, we were getting ready to fight them. But then Kevin happens to be a dragon sorcerer, so he could speak Draconic. And so instead of actually fighting the dragon, he allied with the dragon against the actual evil fake Annadette was her name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Recfield owner.
Yep. Yeah.
And then North Star also got there, and then Kevin blackmailed North Star and Annadette to well, not blackmailed, but basically used them to get a free house and land. But it's just really funny how everything was like kind of intertwined with like a seemingly like one-off random mission. It all just came back in the final battle too, years later. So I think that was literally 2 years after the first time we played, me and Matt at least.
Mm-hmm.
Final battle.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like 2 years after the mission for sure. I don't know. I mean, I feel like we're wrapping up here, but just like all in all, I think I'm gonna really like enjoy like doing this show, like in like diving deep into stories like this and like different things that people have done, and like the possibility of these things existing with another story that someone else has ran. Just like the art and the beauty like behind D&D and like tabletop games like Monster of the Week even is just the fact that like you're working cooperatively to create this story together and like living it together. And I think that this is like Quezdefart is the story that made that all happen for me. And I was playing D&D for I think 4 years prior to that. And that just means you guys as players in my game like meant the world to me. Like all 14 people involved, it was like probably the best experience of my life, like without a doubt. Yeah. And,
yeah, man, it was fun as shit.
Yeah, dude. Seriously. Yeah. Any closing remarks from my boys?
I have a possibly deep question.
Okay.
It's just about like the story. Did you have like a backup alternative story in case like the Earth did get eaten, and like what would that have looked like, or like maybe things went wrong? Like,
I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I was hit with a wave of like realism towards the end of this story, where I think that you guys helped me like build the confidence of, because it felt almost as if I was like living, like we were living in a story together. And you know, sometimes a story doesn't end so good, and a part of me was thinking like, well, if things go bad and they don't figure this out, maybe they do die, and then maybe that's like the next campaign is a different group of people like living in this aftermath trying to figure out how to reverse it. And I never fully actually decided like what I wanted to do, but luckily I didn't have to, because like the moment came and you guys did the battle and you guys won. And yeah.
yeah.
I just want to say one more thing about that final battle, Nikki. You regretted to mention the part where you dove into a giant chasm to catch Tess and then flew back out with her as like the world was literally ending around all of us.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah, dude.
Kevin just, as soon as Tess was in danger, like she switched with, what's it? Was it Pagodi, I think? Someone
I'm
like that?
pretty sure she switched with you, my man.
No. Someone
Then
was falling to the chasm and they couldn't get out, so
It was
I
Ernest.
flew off the bridge.
Yeah,
It
I
was
was gonna say I
Ernest.
think it was
Oh, it was
Ernest.
Yeah, the
So
blind
she
kid.
switched with them, and then I abandoned the battle and used haste to dash as well as cast fly and just went down there and then got there. And so,
Yeah.
because that's all Kevin, not all Kevin cared about, but that was his main thing.
It's just like so interesting to me, like as a final closing remark, how like a relationship, like an omnipresent like relationship between your player characters and NPCs like existed. And I felt the same way about myself, where like I felt almost attached to the story we were writing and like the people that I was creating, the NPCs, because like Pagodi, I started the view as like a representation of like my relationship with you guys, and like because I care about you guys a lot, and like I love playing D&D with you guys. And then when it came time for me to go away to college, I had that game that was like a Pagodi's going away for a while, and he needs you to pick up his stuff, and like that was like my way of like expressing to you guys that I was gonna miss you a bunch, and like it was like that was one of those games that like really made me like appreciate the like experiences that we had in that game. I think it was just, I don't know, it was a wild ride. It was a wild, wild ride. Without doubt.
Yeah.
I'm getting smacked with the heart reactions in Skype
Nice
right now.
hearts.
For anyone listening to the podcast, not the YouTube. Yeah, I mean that's it. I guess that's episode 1. I don't have much to add. I appreciate you guys coming on and talking about your experiences.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, man. Thanks. This is great. What I said.
Yeah. I see that Nicky's having a conversation, so.
He's probably talking to his mom.
Yeah, probably.
Let's
Well-
hope
Nicky,
the
go
rap-
to bed. It's past your bedtime.
He's got
And he's-
the studio right
He's like, get out of here.
No, I think he's telling us to stop.
No, it's Justin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I mean, that's basically all I have. If you enjoyed what you listened to, come back next time to hear an interview with a very, very, very interesting character named Christopher. He used to play test the original Dungeons and Dragons modules with Gary Gygax, who, for anyone that doesn't know, is the creator of Dungeons and Dragons, who passed away just a few years back. And I am super, super excited for that. Almost as equally as excited as I was to record this one. So if you love this, make sure to come back in 2 weeks to listen to an interview with Christopher. All right? Peace out, everybody. Say bye, boys.
Bye-bye.
Bye, boys.
Bye.
What?
Shit. What did you say to me?
Oh, no.
That's so scary. Nicky disappeared. Oh, man. Well, thanks for listening to the first episode of Fable's Cove.